who stopped us. So, but you, especially the younger generation of Africans, you have to be very careful. One thing, asylum doesn't mean that you should sell your country or destroy your country. Yes.
Okay. Your Excellency, security was high on the agenda here. The standby force is not a new idea, it's not a new concept, although France may be taking the credit for it now. But crucially, the funding mechanism and the necessary structures that are supposed to be in place are not. You don't discuss much about this.
Well, that's the point. When we talk about the standby force, I made it very clear that if you have to set up a standby force, that is going to be financed by the West. It will never take. After all, do you need special funding for your standby force? Because every member of the AU that has an army, you take part of that army who are already armed to be part of the standby force. So now, things change when they're dependent entirely on G8 and other Western countries to finance and equip the standby force. Nobody is going to do that. And that's why it has been 7 years today, the standby force has never been met. We have chiefs of defense staff meeting all the time, even the West African standby force. If it was established, as I said, every country you have an army, these soldiers are paid. Why would we need somebody else to foot the bill? Why do we Africans always think that somebody has to foot our bill for our own interest? He who pays the piper costs the tune, and this is why most of us can never be independent. You know, so this standby force, as long as we depend on other people, France may do it, yes. But I think it's going to take a long time because France alone cannot be able to finance that. They also have other problems. France has economic problems. But why should Africa depend on France for the standby force to be established? When every country, you have an army, these soldiers are armed, you have equipment. What else do you want? If you want an air force, except for the Gambia, every country has an air force. Why can't we also, the standby force, the air force, be part of it, the engineers, be part of it? But we always, that's why nobody respects us. Because we have lofty ideas, only to turn around and start begging for those ideas to be implemented or realized. This is the problem. But we could have had a standby force a long time ago.
And Your Excellency, considering all what you have highlighted, what do you have now recommendations?
Pardon?
Recommendations.
Well, they recommended more summits, and as I said, the people were also expecting France to foot the bill and to equip the standby force, which I think would be a very difficult thing for France alone to do. But anyway, let's see what happens. That's how I began my statement. I said, let us wait and see what is going to happen next. Because if we do not take our own problems seriously, nobody is going to take our problems seriously. Remember also that these wars are financed by foreign powers because of mineral resources. So, if armed robbers, you send armed robbers to to Kanilai, for example, and they are stealing my cattle, and I come back to you and say, my friend, why don't you give me weapons to fight the armed robbers? Oh, if you are in charge and say, oh yes, I will do it. You sit down. When they have taken almost everything, then you send you give me equipment. By the time I'm fighting, all my cattle is gone. Tell me one conflict situation in Africa today where the area concerned doesn't have mineral resources. Tell me one African country that doesn't have mineral resources and there's a war. Now, they say, oh, because of abject poverty, the Western media, oh, people are fighting because of abject poverty. Now, how is it possible that somebody who lives below $1 would be able to buy a machine gun that costs almost $100,000? They buy these jeeps and they can wage war for years. Ammunition is very expensive, even too expensive for most states. Now, who is financing them? Now, if poverty is the cause for war, Europe, there are poor countries in Europe. Why can't they go to war? Or anywhere else in the West? Do you understand? So, but in Africa, once they sponsor people, and then look at the target areas for the rebels. They occupy mineral-rich areas. They mine and send out diamonds for just peanuts, because they want arms. That's all. So there is no war in Africa today that is going to benefit any African. That's the reality. All these wars that have been fought are proxy wars for the interest of multinationals.
President Jammeh speaking to journalists about the outcome of the France-Africa Peace and Security Summit held in Paris. Well, our correspondent Abdul Jai was with the presidential delegation in Paris. He now reports on the rousing welcome given to the president on arrival and the dominant theme of this summit and President Jammeh's tribute to the iconic South African former statesman.
Host for the Gambian leader who arrived in Paris to a rapturous reception. They are gathered at the Orly International Airport, more than 400 Gambians mobilized from within and outside Paris to give the Gambian leader and delegation a befitting welcome. He jetted into the city together with the First Lady ahead of the Elysee Summit on Peace and Security in Africa. The summit officially opened Friday afternoon by the French President François Hollande, seeks to discuss the security situation on the continent, but more so the crisis unfolding in the Central African Republic. But the death of the man credited for giving South Africa a new beginning was to overshadow the deliberations as world leaders tried to come to terms with his passing. Tribute for the first black president of the South African country, Nelson Mandela, extended well beyond these walls, indicating just how much Madiba meant to South Africans, the African continent, and the world. President Jammeh had paid his respects to the man before addressing the gathering in his capacity as the chairman of the African Union Peace and Security Council.
I also convey our heartfelt condolences to all African revolutionaries who have no intention of giving up on the struggle. The struggle now has started for real total liberation of Africa, because the conditions that exist today were the same conditions that existed before the white man came to Africa. The loss of Nelson Mandela is Allah's decision. All we need to do is leave his legacy, live by the values and the ideas that he stood for, and pray for him. It's a great loss to Africa, but you know, Allah decides and nobody can do anything about it. From a personal perspective, I think he suffered long enough, and it is better for him to rest than just stay. He's not alive, he's not dead, and suffering. I think this is better for him and his family, who have gone through a lot of agony, and may his soul rest in peace.
He praised President Hollande for convening the meeting, but criticized the West for the double standard and the hypocrisy just the same. He argued that such actions have only helped in fanning the wars prevailing in parts of the continent and lightly ignores the very positive development stories showcased by Africa. Professor Jammeh went on to call for an immediate end to the blame game held in the Western world and the media to adopt a more holistic approach to ending Africa's problems instead.
His Excellency the President, I think, made a significant impact on the summit, being, of course, a leader in the areas of peace and security, added to his current position as the chairman of the African Union Peace and Security Council. The President was given a lead role, and he delivered as expected, addressing the issues with sincerity, honesty, and straightforwardness, because more often than not, Africa is given the sole blame for the problems that happen on our continent. But as His Excellency the President rightly observed, these problems are not entirely endogenous. Some of the factors affecting conflict in Africa come from without, and he pointed that out and rightly advised those who interfere in our internal issues to back off and give us a chance to maintain peace, security, and stability on the continent.
French President François Hollande had earlier announced an envelope worth over 20 billion euros for development projects in Africa, also offered to help strengthen the Africa Standby Force through training and the provision of logistics. He was, however, quick to note that it was Africa's responsibility to lead the way in fighting its own war. President Hollande again expressed intention to take up the issue with the world's most industrialized nations.